preach. I sometimes feel like it's my job to preach the word, to go out and explain to people what threat assessment is. And I take this mission so seriously that every time there is another shooting, I feel it in my heart. And for some reason, we can look at sucidality as something we need to jump in and roll our sleeves up and deal with and help these kids. But we don't see homicidality as the other side of the coin, which it is. So where are you going to put your resources? And how are you going to do it effectively? And threat assessment can be a lean, mean machine.
What is going on, everybody? 'Tis I, the enigma of the gun airwaves, Miyanovich, welcoming you to Season 3 of the Liberal Gun Owners Lens podcast, where unprecedented perspectives are packed into the cargo hold for the LGO Lens spaceship Voyagio.
That's fucking Italian.
Don't believe that evolution is possible with guns and public safety in America? It's already happening, y'all. Minds are evolving. Think guns versus public safety is the only game in town, do ya? Think culture war is the big boss, do ya? Then keep your ass in the past. Everyone else, all aboard! Yeah, it's crazy to learn about the brain and the adolescent brain. You know, I always thought that like the whole neurological pubescent thing ends at 18, but apparently it goes way further than that, like 25-ish. In kids, I mean, I have two. My 12-year-old is basically a teenager, so I don't ever say she's a tween. She's been a teenager for like 2 years. But their brains are nuts, right? And it's totally okay, you know, that their brains are nuts. But I can see how that would happen if you got a kid and you are able to get that kid out of some situation and let their brain go. That maybe they're not perfect after that, but they're not school shooter level for sure. What do you think about the term high risk? Some people still use it. Some people don't use it. They think it's not PC anymore. What
like a whole school being high risk?
Just the term itself, like identifying a kid as that's a high risk kid, labeling a person as high risk. Is it a problem for you at all? Is it fine?
That's such a good question. So I'm a psychologist and I have been trained to diagnose, and I dislike using diagnoses because I dislike labels. But I also understand that sometimes they're really, really helpful. So usually when I'm writing reports, I'm not going to say this person is a high-risk person. I'll talk more about their behavior and their behavior being high risk because people do like having a label to stick on it. But the critical thing is always to focus on what would make them lower risk, what would increase risk, what are the protective factors, what are the risk factors. That's more interesting to me than sticking a label on someone.
It seems to me that as long as you're not like in the kid's face going, you're high risk, you're high risk, and making that kid feel like the kid is more of a fucking alien, that if you're using it professionally, it's fine. It seems to be very helpful to me. I understand why it might be. Why people have there's negative connotations with it. But I think in the professional realm, I think we have enough of a problem, I think, getting people hip to doing threat assessment. And if people are just going to not want to do it because of terms and that kind of shit that's happening now is such sensitivity to language. And like, we need to get on it. Like, we need to get moving. And if we're fighting over the term high risk being used behind closed doors, this is one of these wastes of time areas, in my opinion.
Totally.
So let's move back to mass shootings, just like as a phenomenon. There's been an uptick. You know, if we look at the 3-year average, depends on how you look at it. So when we were at the threat assessment conference, like John and Mark Fulman were having a conversation, and John was talking about how he sees the rates of mass shootings and the 3-year increments. And Mark has some other metric-y thing he does. So John doesn't necessarily see that he sees other mass shootings as up threefold, but school shootings kind of staying the same-ish if you look at them in 3 years increments. Mark Fulman believes that they're up, right? I don't think it fucking matters. Like, it's crazy either. This is fucking bonkers. The whole thing is bonkers. What's your view on it since you've been doing this? You feel like it's kind of staying the same? It's bonkers. We know it's bonkers, but it's staying the same. It's getting worse. How do you feel when you wake up every day and you think about it?
So overall, we know the numbers are going up a bit. It's hard to do any math when we put COVID into the situation because that messed up all kinds of statistical everything. We also know that school shootings are a piece of overall shootings, but not all of them. And we also know that people who are in college or the workplace or committing open space shootings were once in school. So for me, perhaps the boundaries are a little more fuzzy, because if you have a student who was glued together during school and then fell apart when they left school, that's important information to know, that they needed more help, and that help needed to be ongoing, not just when they were in school. But maybe I'm a glass half full person. I do see the increase in awareness as being a good thing because it allows us to intervene with kids at a younger and younger age, or intervene with people faster to try to change things.
Have you been involved in implementation for a system in a school, or been consulted? I'm assuming you're consulted by schools. Do schools call you and go, we have this threat, and can you get involved? And you have that stuff going on?
I do. Often schools, maybe they have a team or maybe they don't have a team, and they want to call an outside threat assessment person to give a perspective. Usually if it's me, it's because there's some kind of mental health aspect to it, which they need help explaining, and they feel that their current team doesn't have an adequate person who has a good enough depth of understanding of threat assessment, or who understands the mental health part of it, can do. One of the things I love the most is, I don't know if I should say this on the air, but I
can take it out later if you want.
You can edit it out if it's inadvisable. But I have a contract with an insurance company called United Educators, which insures colleges, I think colleges in general, and then also private schools. And they have a rider. So if you need threat assessment help, you can call up one of the 4 people who are on their list, one of whom is me. And when I do it, often these schools don't have a threat assessment team. So we form like an ad hoc threat assessment team. And I say, we pull someone from HR, and you pull someone from here, and you pull someone from there. And then we have a team, and we sit down and we talk about the case. And watching the threat assessment light go on over these people's heads as they take a situation which started out being terrifying, and as we work through the process becomes not terrifying and manageable. It's wonderful. I love seeing it. I want to teach everyone how to do threat assessment so I don't have to do it. I want to teach them to garden their own vegetables, to do it. And I love it. I love it. I love it when I get to do it.
Unfortunately, I think it's needed. Like the threat assessment, like I just, from the gun perspective, right? The Democratic Party's gun control platform, if it is perfect, if it's at perfect behavioral intervention, perfect prevention, perfect, right? If it's perfect and works as when they sell it, as it works as they're selling it, which by the way, it will never, because it's a long conversation about law and behavior. But when is this fucking thing going to land? When are you going to land it? When can it land, this perfect, beautiful, between now and then, what are we going to do? And the answer is threat assessment. It's not just threat assessment, but that's one of the main answers. So they're not going away. The mass shootings in public, mass shootings in the workplace, mass shootings in schools. We're the worst culture in the world for it. It's going to be the worst fucking example of it on earth still for what, 10 years, 15, I don't know, until this beautiful thing lands and it's cool. What are we going to do? Just sit here and argue about policies. I think everybody has to. Like, this is the only way out, is community awareness, awareness in the home, awareness at the school. What's the small little protocol thing we have to do so we're not wasting our time? Everybody's going to have to do this. If we don't, you're just going to keep getting what you fucking get.
Yeah, you said it earlier and again now that it has to be personal. It can't be dictated from on high, because everyone's context, I'll use that word 100 times, everyone's context is different. And doing threat assessment and the threat assessment resources where I live versus where you live are going to be entirely different. And every child in every school, every employee in every place, everyone is a unique individual. And threat assessment allows for that. It's like a system that allows for individuality, which is so beautiful and so human. And this is what we need to preach. I sometimes feel like it's my job to preach the word, to go out and explain to people what threat assessment is. And I take this mission so seriously that every time there is another shooting, I feel it in my heart. Did I not work hard enough? Did all of us in this field, what could we have done? Where did we fail? Because they're failures. Because for the most part, there's some people who are not salvageable, as you said. But for the most part, those people could have gone on to a complete life. But they were failed by their community.
Yeah. It reminds me of what Peter Parker says to Tony Stark in one of the most recent Spider-Man, probably this first Spider-Man, where he says to Tony Stark, look, the bad things happen, but whenever you can do what I can do, and then the bad things still happen, it's because of you. Like, he's kind of wrong. He's putting too much on himself, but your perspective is like Peter Parker's perspective. They still happen. It's because you're not applying, right? You know, this made me think of, I've done a lot of exposing myself to terrible things to understand this, you know, like looking at morgue photos from the Columbine shooting, so that I'm not one of these fucking first and foremost, I'm not a fucking gun guy. I'm a human who happens to also own guns. I'm not a gun guy, but I am a gun professional, right? So not one of these gun professionals that's like, oh, well, it's not my problem, you know. It's terrible, but it's not my problem, which is liberal or conservative is most people's mentality. We could have a conversation about that. It has to do with male psychology in my book, and I'm not fucking, that's a very male-esque thing. But that's a whole other conversation. It's a terrible habit, and guns are highly populated by male psychology. And so one of the reasons why things don't get better is because of that, right? It's one of the main reasons. But I made sure that I wasn't going to do that. So I look at the difficult things, right? I exposed myself to them. And one of them was, I can't remember what case it was, but it was a kid who I don't know if he had something diagnosed or not. I think he did, but he killed both of his parents. And then he went out and did a thing. I can't remember if it was at a school. I think it might have been. But I listened to the interviews with him from the police afterwards, where he actually realized what he did. He wasn't able to connect to it until he was in the room, that he actually did that. And he killed, but the part is he killed his parents. And that's where he realized he did it. And imagine if you would love your parents to death and would never harm them. That's your feeling. But then you killed them. That's the noises that came out of him. I don't recommend any human being listen to that unless you really want to get it, right? The psychological reality behind this stuff is way more complex. And what you just said, which is that kid had a love for his parents. It's profound. and he still killed them. Somebody could have been in there and intervened and connected with that. Certainly, I'm pretty certain over 50-50 chance I think somebody could have. That kid could have been saved, right? So I'm with you on that. Like, but the reality is what? How much time, how much money, how much energy, right? It's hyper complex. But I'm with you, like on this, like, we got to do this.
I've heard that noise. I have sat in a room with someone who killed his mother, and it's devastating.
The kids are reachable is the thing. They're reachable.
They are. A lot of this stuff is transient. And for some reason, we can look at suicidality as something we need to jump in and roll our sleeves up and deal with and help these kids. But we don't see homicidality as the other side of the coin, which it is.
There's so many rabbit holes I need to go down to understand, right? And I just don't have the time. So we know about suicide contagion. That's an established thing. Well, obviously there's mass shootings contagion also. And now we have this mix of the two because the suicidality thing is becoming prominent, more and more prominent in these school shootings. It's the method of committing suicide. So have you ever thought about that? Like the psychological contagion with suicide and the mass shootings contagion and their relationship? Because I haven't seen any literature or heard anybody really talk about it.
So some people talk about copycats. That's one of the things. From a practice standpoint, rather than a research standpoint, it is something that comes up a lot. So when I get calls from schools or the schools that I contract with, when there is a shooting that's happened in the neighborhood, fear goes up, management goes up, paying attention to what's going on goes up. Let's take the recent disaster in Maine, right, where he committed a mass shooting and then was on the lam for quite a while, or dead in the woods for quite a while before they found him. That created an extremely heightened level of fear in almost the entire Northeast. Everyone's level of fear went up. Everyone was worried that someone in their community was going to copycat that because it was tangible. Everyone was talking about it everywhere. So kids were identified more often. And that's good because if kids or grown-ups are identified, then we can jump in and help them. It's bad when I've had several cases of people who were inappropriately prosecuted or had their liberties constrained because they made a stupid statement right after something bad happened. So if you say, I want to kill everyone in math class, in a good week, they'll just tell you to take a time out and study harder. If you say that same thing right after a shooting, you're going to be kicked out of school and may never be allowed to come back. I mean, I've seen people who were prosecuted and put on house arrest because they made a threat right after a shooting.
Yeah, this is one of the points that I try to get across to gun owners, and that is because one of the things that gun owners will do is they'll say, well, there's, how do I say it? Well, I call it low volume, high social impact, right? So even though we're looking at a lot of mass shootings happening, if you're looking at the trends of overall violence since the 70s, it's generally down with this little uptick that's kind of been happening. How many people are killed by the AR-15 or the semi-automatic rifle every year? Our hip shot estimate is no more than 150. What other things in society do we make a huge deal out of that kill 150 people or less? We don't. So that's something that gun owners rest on a lot. It's just like, it's really not that many people. But here's the thing, is that low volume, high social impact problems are still horrendous for guns and gun rights. They're terrible for gun owners. So because it has this mass effect, I mean, look at the effect that it has in our politics, right? Or where money is spent, or it has massive effects, and psychological, right? So one of the things that I want to get gun owners hip to is if you're going to be honest about this whole, like, gun rights and public safety and we need to have a better world and all of this, then you need to accept low volume, high social impact issues as real issues. And if they happen, the future of gun rights isn't great, right? It's not great. So that's one of the things in terms of this education we've been talking about, getting people hip. I want people to understand that low volume, high social impact problems are just as impactful as, I would say, other forms of gun related negatives.
It's an interesting way to look at it because often when I'm doing training and I'm trying to get across the idea that you need to do this, I use that exact same argument and it works to get people to take action. And I say, the likelihood of a shooting happening in this place is extremely low. But if it does happen, what happens to your good name? What happens to your money? Sometimes I'll have them give me a list of 5 things that are important that make your company or your school or your church or your community great. And I say, they put them up on the board. And then I say, which ones of these are going to vanish if there's a shooting? And it's all of them. No one wanted to buy real estate in Sandy Hook for decades, right? For like a decade until COVID happened and people needed to get out of the city. The impact is astonishing. So we have to put some effort into it while being aware that so many other problems are a bigger issue. Like in hospitals, yes, they have to plan for shootings, but the chances of a reactive violence happening, someone just punching someone or getting mad, are like hundreds of times bigger.
Yeah.
Campuses need to focus on campus shootings, but rapes are happen all the time. So where are you going to put your resources and how are you going to do it effectively? And threat assessment can be a lean, mean machine.
Totally. It doesn't take much. Like that's what, when I talk to John, he always says it doesn't take much. It really doesn't.
Exactly.
It doesn't. It's in the threat assessments that I've assisted with, they're 20 minutes, they're done. It was 2 people, 20 minutes. And you don't have to go to college. And if you have systems like John's system, it's not expensive. You can do it anywhere in the world. You can do it in the country. You can do it in the city. You can do it like you did it. Like that's another thing I'm an advocate for. We've got this like small team idea going on where like, what if you only have 2 or 3 people? That's fine. It's, you just have 1 or 2 people, 3 people. If that's all you got, grab with another person and do it. It's better than, there's the sort of this area of, well, you don't want to have shit threat assessment, right? But there's also something's better than nothing. There's a like gray area between those two. But I think that's what I'm working on as a concept is a small team threat assessment thing with like 3 people. How do you make it awesome, but you don't have the resources and you only have 3 people and it's bing, bang, bong based on John's system. It's something I've just been thinking about because a lot of people, because there's a concern about shitty threat assessment and we're involved here locally trying to improve this school system and their fucking approach is, it's okay. It's better than nothing, but it's not very good. And they don't do a fucking good job. But I like the fact that people call you and you're just like, fuck it, let's do it. 2, 3 people.
Well, the irony is that I live in Connecticut where we had Sandy Hook, right? And after Sandy Hook, we passed gun control laws and said, okay, we're done. So there is very little quality threat assessment that goes on here. Though there are school districts that are an exception to the rule. In general, they say they have threat assessment, but they don't. So, yeah, but I'm a big fan of the multidisciplinary approach. I think that the more brains you have in the room who have more ways of looking at a problem, the better it is. Look at you, your background, doing all sorts of different things and then coming into this sphere. It gives you a different perspective and a different way to problem solve through the issues. So if you have all these different brains, you're going to come up with better solutions. And that's why I love integrating into existing teams or new teams, because I don't know their context. I don't know their flavor. I don't know what kind of supports they have going on. I don't know what their building looks like or their grounds look like. And they know all of that. And they can apply that to the knowledge that I bring to the table. And it's fun.
Yeah, if people are into, when we met, I had the Sherlock Holmes he had on. If people are into Sherlock Holmes at all and you have that kind of a bug in you, this shit is cool. Like it's neato to like and you're helping kids. Like mostly we're talking about, student threat assessment, but you're helping kids and you're getting to be Sherlock Holmes. And mostly these kids are not, you're just helping them to get into a better position almost every time. Yes, maybe there's one where, holy shit, this is the one, right? But it is actually like, it's intellectually stimulating in that way. The other thing I wanted to add to when you put your list up for these are the things that could happen. These are the things that could go away. One of the things that I try to make a point to people is like, do you like these schools that have been around forever and have this beautiful building? Many of these schools are razed after it happens. They just knock the fucking building down because nobody wants to go in the building ever again, right? That can happen to people too. Like I think about the high school that I went to. My stepdad worked in the athletic department of a very nice prep school, and although I had enough brains to get in, I went. Maybe I wouldn't have gone there if my stepdad hadn't worked in the athletic department. This campus is amazing, and it is beautiful. And what would happen if something went down there? I can't even think about driving onto that campus, and it would screw everything up. Do you know what I mean? Like psychologically, that's a major cost. Do I want to send my kids to that school after that thing happened? Or we're going to have to knock the main building down now and rebuild it somewhere else. And this isn't paranoia. We're not being paranoid. We're just trying to express to people the actual reality, complex reality of what this shit is.
People have long memories. We still say going postal. And how long ago was that string of postal shootings? A really long time ago.
I still say it. I still catch myself saying it. I'm surprised in Connecticut. I know that Sandy Hook, the element, I would consider them now to be like the nation's model for how to handle this with like, they built a new school and it's at SEPTED and they've got great threat assessment and they're major advocates for threat assessment. This is where like the crossover between the people in guns that give a shit and the public safety people, the high gun control people overlap. Is that there's a bipartisan, quote unquote, all the way across the spectrum agreement by many people that threat assessment is where it's at.
Yeah, I'll probably get in trouble for saying that.
That's fine. I like those kind of statements.
So it is true that Sandy Hook has done a lot, and all of the organizations that have come out of that have done a lot. Sandy Hook was a uniquely horrible moment in our history. And one of the things that is most interesting to me is that a lot of the times the shooters get lionized by other teens. Not him. Not that shooter. There's something so vile about what he did that nobody wants to be like him. And in some ways that protects Sandy Hook because you don't have like Columbine people coming back to do homage and pilgrimage to the sites,
right,
etc. He's not a compelling figure.
Yeah. I talked to John about the evolutionary history of humans and the berserker, which is what John calls it. There's a recent study or a recent article, it's probably within the last 5 years. I can't remember the tribe or the village. They have one guy that's he's psycho, like he's like crazy, but he fucks everything up for the tribe. But they moved a hut outside of the area where they live for him. They give him the food. They keep him because he's especially good at being intense when he's needed, and he's out of his mind, and they need him. We seem to some quote unquote need him. They probably don't need him. But something inside of them is like survival wise, we need a fucker like this. And I do think we might have something like that deep inside. Like we revere awesomeness, even if it's terrible awesomeness. And we can worship it. There's something about the power. I'll mention his name. Maybe I'll bleep it out or maybe I won't. But with all of the information that's left from Eric Harris, this is exactly what he wanted to happen. He said it. He said it. I'm going to start this shit and kick it off right. A revolution is going to happen. He said it in advance, and it's exactly what he got. And I think there's a nuanced discussion to that, but that like psychotic, overwhelming power is very, very attractive to obviously vulnerable people.
It's attractive to everyone. That's why pull up the TV guide, if such a thing exists. What do you have on TV? You have shows about violent people, and they're often the heroes of the shows, all of the mobster shows. People like watching it. We find it to be appealing.
I miss TV Guide, by the way. I used to love TV Guide. I hope people that are listening even fucking know what it is.
I know, I'm so old.
Yeah. I mean, that's a whole other discussion. I really hadn't thought about that. The Sandy Hook dude is not really, people don't like
yeah, no one does. And so many other people are sanctified or followed, or we're trained. Peter Langman does this whole thing where he talks about the code words that the previous shooters used that potential shooters might echo. And it's something that you have to be aware of when you're doing an analysis, is whether they're echoing these other guys.
Yeah, I noticed that more and more the literature reflects that. Like, keep an eye out for the emulation of the cultural script and the lionization of these people. I say a lot of not. We were talking before the interview. We were talking about gallows humor and all that. I call the incel war. I call it the war of the unfuckables. That's my that's my term for it. It's really not cool with me because, you know, it speaks to what's wrong with you. You're in high school and you're not having sex, and you're a geek and you're a nerd and you're a fucking loser because you're not having sex. And it speaks to that. But I give myself a mulligan on it because that's one of my favorite phrases, the war of the unfuckables.
It's true though, right? And the way that we react to it is, it's indicative of our discomfort with the whole idea of sexuality and our inability to help people who are not sexually successful. I'm actually putting together a talk. We'll see how successful I am on the intersection between pornography and the lack of sexual success and threat assessment. Because what's more important? I mean, what's more important than finding a mate?
Yeah, deeply important. In the bones important.
Talk about evolutionarily important. There's nothing more important than procreation. That's why we're here on the planet. We're procreation machines. Yes. And for those people who are unable to fulfill that basic biological premise, it's devastating.
Yeah, that's just something. This is great you brought this up, because I'm going to be talking to you about this, because one of the things I pitched to John was, now you don't know this, but I've been doing 5 years of research and writing on the anthropologic relationship between humans and weapons, and how that affects psychology and behavior, and how it leads all the way to to the gun reality. No human society has ever been without the production of projectiles. Never. We always produce them everywhere we go, where we survive and we reproduce. Weapons are there, and they're everywhere, every society, and particularly projectiles. And that has a lot more meaning than just successful hunting, the expression of interpersonal force. Of course, it's those things, but social coercion. But it is super, super deep. That's why you can't get rid of it. You in this culture, you want to try to get rid of the human weapon relationship. It's like throw a tic tac at a solid wall. You're not gonna. There's no laws. You're not getting rid of it, right? This is an evolutionarily reinforced thing that has had the most special platform given to it ever in this country. And that's why it's a son of a bitch. But in order to understand what we're dealing with, we need to understand what we're dealing with. So I would like to talk to you about your thoughts about that, because I told John, I just pitched it. I was like, what do you think if I wrote an evolutionary psychology grade literature paper on on mass shootings and evolution? He was like, dude, definitely do that. So I think I'm going to do it. I'd like to talk to you about that when I get to that point, because I'd like to hear your thoughts on it.
I love it. I think it's a great idea. And I think there's so many basic human drives that aren't being met. And that is what leads to the sense of having to come up with a horrible solution.
Yeah. Yeah. I think once you lay it out in a multidisciplinary fashion like this, we're getting to it. Like, this is a new problem for us. This is only 20 years long, essentially, if we're looking at the cultural script of the school shooting in America. It's the meat and potatoes is 20 years long. Of course, it goes back further than that. But this particular fucking thing is 20 years long. It's a lot to figure out in 20 years for society that's being super politically dysfunctional. But I do think there's a way to demystify it from soup to nuts and be like, okay, we kind of know why this is happening. Like neurologically, interpersonally, we kind of know. We might not have a perfect knowledge, but a much better knowledge, and I think we'd be able to get at it.